All right. So I tried to think of some embarrassing way to introduce our next speaker. I asked everyone he knows, what embarrassing thing could I say about Eric Peterson to introduce him? And I'm very sorry to report that he is such a nice guy that no one was willing to volunteer anything. So I'll be delivering the most dry introduction of all time. Eric is the executive vice president of BioVentures and probably a friend to many of you. He is a friend to many of us across Arkansas's entrepreneurial ecosystem. He's also an associate professor of pharmacology and toxicology and a serial inventor, not the Cheerios kind, the other kind. Also serves as chair of the Patent and Copyright Committee, which is a very important function for any of you who wish to become inventors. So he's a good person to know. Eric, I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Thank you, Sarah. As we get to know each other more, I'm sure you'll have plenty of embarrassing stories for me. All right, thank you. Yeah, I know a lot of familiar faces out there. I love this. I've been at UAMS since 2002, since I came here as a postdoc, and I came into the laboratory of Dr. Michael Owens, who was inventing antibodies to treat methamphetamine abuse. And about the time that I came in, he started a company called Intervection. And so while I wasn't involved with the company, I knew that a lot of the research I was doing was going to pour into that, and there was commercialization value in that. So I've kind of been, I guess, commercialization adjacent the whole time. And so while I was running my laboratory, getting R01 grants, and then my first invention out of my lab was in 2012. And after I got that patent, then I was asked to be on the Patent and Copyright Committee. And I've been on the Patent and Copyright Committee since 2014. And so as part of that, we evaluate all of the patents that come through, all the disclosures that come through UAMS, evaluate those for patentability, maybe, make some, are they marketable or not? And, and those sorts of decisions that what's going to make a good patent. Most of them are not, but we patent them anyway, and then we see where they go. So Sarah and the Chancellor gave wonderful high-level talks about what is commercialization, what's it like to be an entrepreneur, what are the things that the thinking that goes into it, and maybe as a scientist, the thinking that you as you decide whether you want to go into the dark side of commercialization. What I'm going to talk about is just a little bit more granular. Like, you're at UAMS, what do you do if you have an idea at UAMS? And this is a little bit more specific. And I know this is a nice mix of experienced entrepreneurs and people who have patented a lot. I mean, a lot. There's some people here with a lot of patents, and there are those that are new. So hopefully this is, for those that are new, this is going to introduce you to what the process is at UAMS. And then for those that are seasoned, maybe you'll learn something you forgot. So we'll jump into it. So what is BioVentures? And Kevin's going to talk later this afternoon about the things that are going on at BioVentures, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of dry history. It's the tech transfer office at the University of Arkansas. It's responsible for managing and licensing all of the intellectual property that comes out of UAMS. The structure is that it's set up as a part of a 501c3 corporation. So it's an LLC that is separate from UAMS. And there's some legal reasons and dry reasons for that I won't really go into, but its sole purpose is for the education of the UAMS faculty and staff, and for managing these inventions. So this is called technology transfer. And this team at BioVentures is made up with people with knowledge in licensing, business development, healthcare sciences, legal matters, and is growing every day. Kevin has put together quite a team. I'll just show you a picture of it here in a second. But simply, tech transfer refers to the process of transferring technology from one organization to another. So how do you get that information from one organization to another? And it usually involves money. Ideally, it involves money. So you can involve transferring intellectual property, such as patents, copyrights, trademarks, and I'll tell you the difference in those in just a second. And then this is all used to bring new technologies and innovations to the marketplace. So BioVentures was founded in 1994 as the Biomedical Biotechnology Center, the BBC, and it was part of the College of Medicine at that time. After that, it moved into its current facility, where it's being overshadowed by the big proton center that's being built around us. We kind of feel like that little house in Up, the movie Up, if you've ever seen that were being built all around, and they just kind of carved out a space for us. So BBC and the BioVentures Incubator Program were then transferred to the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research in 2007. So by building this building, they expanded from just a tech transfer office to an incubator space. And in the incubator space, we have about 10 laboratories and adjacent offices that a startup company can rent. And so if you start a company, just a little knowledge, if you start a company for an invention that you have at UAMS, you cannot do the company's research in your laboratory. You have to have a separate space to do that. And we can rent these economical little laboratories that you can perform that work for your startup company. And then in 2017, we privatized the operations into the LLC structure that I talked about in 2017. All right, so what are BioVentures roles? We have a lot of roles. One is health sciences, innovation, and entrepreneurship education, which is what we're doing now. We're fulfilling that role to educate the faculty staff of UAMS and elsewhere on entrepreneurship education. We manage the invention disclosures, the patents, the copyrights, the proprietary materials that come out of UAMS. We're also responsible for marketing those, helping you develop spin-off companies, and managing BioVentures incubator space for startups, like I talked about. And then one of the reasons when I joined BioVentures, Kevin had pitched to me after I'd been on the Patent and Copyright Committee for a while, and then the chair of the Patent and Copyright Committee. He came on after the unfortunate passing of Nancy Gray, who was the former director of BioVentures. When Kevin came on, he said, "Hey, why don't you join me and let's run this together and see what we can do." And I thought, I was kind of at a point. I had a couple of graduate students had just graduated and thought, well, maybe I'm kind of tired of writing grants. Maybe I don't want to do that quite as much and take a little break from it. And I said, okay, I'll give it a try for about 6 months. And what's the first thing we did when I joined? We wrote a grant. Yeah. So, and we've written 3 since then. But this time, I'm not doing it alone in my office or in my home office at night, pounding away on the keyboard to write that R01. We've got a team, and Kevin's going to introduce all these people a little bit later, but I want to show you how this is growing. We have grant writers, we have engineers, we have financial gurus, we have entrepreneur in residence like Jay, and all of these people. And the one person that's not on here is Kevin, who's brought all these people together who are touching at least BioVentures on a part-time basis and giving their expertise that they've learned over the years to you if you need it. So why would a researcher use tech transfer? Sarah's covered this, the chancellor covered this, but you want to protect your intellectual property. And your intellectual property is the ideas that you have coming from your laboratory. So anything that you create in your role at BioVentures and your capacity or not BioVentures, at UAMS is property of UAMS. So you want to capture that and you want to protect that. And also at BioVentures, you can get support for further development and testing of the innovation. There's some money available we'll talk about later. And then we can help you facilitate the commercialization by finding partners who can manufacture, like Dr. Peterson was talking about. If you can't find people to manufacture it, distribute it, make your invention, then you're going to have problems getting it to market. Okay, so why else? You want to enhance your reputation and your visibility as a researcher and innovator, and patents are one of the ways to do that. You can contribute to the advancement of science and technology. Of course, that's what we want to do. And a thought that you need to keep in mind is that if you don't have a way to make money off an invention, it will probably never reach a patient. Because someone has to develop it, someone has to market it, someone has to get it into patients. And so if you don't have some commercialization plan for that, it probably really won't reach it into a patient. And then realizing the social and economic impact of your inventions. We all got into science for, more than just to make money. We want to make an impact. And this is the real way to make an impact. All right, so what are the intellectual property? What is intellectual property when we say that word? What types of intellectual property can we create? Number one is a copyright. One of our highest grossing inventions at BioVentures is actually a copyright. It's not a patent. It's not a trademark. It's a copyright. And it was Amy Hester, and she started HD Nursing. She developed a fall scale. And it was a document, and it was a program to detect what risk a patient had for falling. And if you know hospitals, you know that falls are just the thing they want to avoid the most, and people coming back into the hospital. And so we copyrighted that, and she built a whole business, a very successful business around it. And it's generated a lot of revenue for her and for UAMS. The next is a trademark. We know about this. It's right on the front of the podium. All of these things are trademarks. You can trademark an abstract mark, a word mark, a pictorial mark, whatever. Those can be trademarked, and those are registered with the trademark office. And so at the systems office, right over off University in the Heights, that's where they handle all of the trademark licensing, like the Razorback trademark licensing and all those deals. And that's millions of dollars a year for the university system just to license the Razorback trademark. And then there's trade secrets. Trade secrets, there's not as much registration that you have to do with trade secrets. You just have to protect them, but they can be licensed. So if someone wanted to know the trade secret for the Bush's family beans, they could be licensed out, I suppose. Some examples are the Google search algorithm. WD-40 is a trade secret. It's not patented. And then Coca-Cola. It's locked in a safe somewhere in Atlanta, I think, that they keep the trade secret recipe for Coca-Cola. And then finally, there's patents. And that's probably, as researchers, what we'll deal with most is patenting our ideas. And a patent technically is a government authority or license conferring a right or title for a set period, especially for the sole right to exclude others from making, using, or selling an invention. And I read that legalese just to get to the point, exclude others from making or using the invention. So it's often thought that a patent gives you the right to do something. It's actually the opposite. It gives you the right to stop somebody else from doing that thing. So if you patent something, you don't ever have to, if you patent a molecule, you don't have to make it. You don't have to market it. But it gives you the right to stop somebody else from doing it. I mean, it's not very good for you commercially to not do that, but if you just wanted to set on something, you could do it. But also in stopping that other person that might be interested in doing that thing, then they can come to you and license it from you. If you don't want to do it, then let them license it, and they can carry that out. Why else do you want to disclose intellectual property? Well, it's the law. There's something called the Bayh-Dole Act, that requires any government contractors or grantees to patent any intellectual property. And we at BioVentures have to report all of that to something called iEdison. And iEdison is the software that NIH, NSF, all of the granting institutions use to track that intellectual property. And the government actually has some claim to that. They have first right to use it if they need to in an emergency, but they rarely exercise that for most inventions. And then the university states that the ownership of all intellectual property created by an employee of the university, like I said earlier, shall reside at the university. So you have a responsibility to the university as well. But then to benefit patients, like I said, most of this will have to be commercialized in order to get into patients. So that's a little bit overview of intellectual property. Now you've got an idea, and this is the question we hear most is, now what? I have an idea. What should I do next? Do I talk to you guys first, or do we disclose it? Let's talk through that a little bit. First, you disclose your idea, and please call us, talk to us, email us, and we can set up an initial appointment and talk to you about when you disclose, because choosing when to disclose is important. You certainly want to disclose your invention before you publicly disclose it. And public disclosure can be a lot of things. It can be an abstract at a meeting. It can certainly be a publication. A public disclosure could be a talk in front of your department, or even amongst colleagues if it gets down to it, if you're openly disclosing your idea. But usually it means publicly disclosing it to outside UAMS generally. And that's at abstracts or manuscripts. So before you do that, come talk to us, because after you publicly disclose, then it is known as open knowledge. And there is what they call prior art out there. And so the U.S. patent examiners can look at your patent application and say, well, no, there's a publication prior to this showing this invention's already existing. And you say, well, no, that was my manuscript. I invented it. It's like, well, yeah, but you publicly disclosed it. So now it's out there. So you must protect that before you publicly disclose it. So we can also in BioVentures, if you're not sure if you're ready to disclose, if you're not sure you're ready to patent, or if you're not sure that there's a market for any of your inventions, we can run this through some software that we have called PatSnap that shows, one, if there's any other inventions like it out there, that, you know, if you have a runway, this is a novel idea, to a runway to patent it. There's also an analytical component of it that will look for the marketability, who else is licensing in this area, help identify customers like a Pfizer or Merck if they're interested in it. So it's a powerful software that we've invested in to bring to you guys. So once you're ready to disclose, you prepare the disclosure presentation. It's not, I mean, you prepare the disclosure and it's not that hard, but I'll walk through each one of these steps. And then you present to the UAMS Patent and Copyright Committee, and then the committee determines what's the decision is with it, and then we'll help you prepare the next step based on the committee's decision. So to submit the disclosure, you submit it online through another piece of new software we're just onboarding, and I think we just made it live. Audrey was in charge of this two weeks ago? Yeah, 2 weeks ago. So if you submit a disclosure now, you will help us and be a guinea pig for this software and tell if it works or not. So once you submit the form, then we'll assess the disclosure for completeness. And once it's complete, then we'll talk to you about starting the technology assessment process. So to do this is our homepage, bioventures.tech or bioventures.ums.edu. They'll take you there. So in the upper right corner, there's a little space for inventors. And there's a few links for inventors there. And one of them is to submit a disclosure. And once you do that, it will take you to this page, which will tell you, and we're working with the software vendor on this because there's a big login at the top. It says, put in your username and password. And then in tiny, tiny little letters underneath, login through UAMS. And that's the one you want to use. We paid extra for SSO integration so that we could make it easy for UAMS researchers. We have all of your names, all of your department affiliations. So you just need to log in with your UAMS credentials. And so I anticipate that the number one question we'll get on doing the disclosures, I've created an account. Now I don't know where my disclosure is going. And we think it would probably go off into the ether somewhere. So anyway, Audrey is working really hard with the software vendor to get that. But anyway, once you successfully find that and navigate your way into the system, there'll be another area that you said disclosure questionnaire. And that's the one you fill out for your disclosure. So we're going to try to make this as streamlined as possible for you as we tweak and integrate the system a little bit more. But the software is called Wellspring Sophia, and it's a whole tech transfer office management package. And so it tracks all the inventions from disclosure to provisional patents to patents and then on into marketing. So we think it's going to be a powerful tool for us. So in terms of invention disclosures at UAMS, it varies by year, but we kind of bump along right about 50 disclosures a year over time. I think we've been a little bit low, and we're a little bit low this year. I think we're about 30% lower than we usually are about this time of year. So if you guys have an idea, come talk to us and get your disclosure in. It's a good time to do it. All right, so once the disclosure is in, we'll do a technology assessment. So we'll take the PatSnap software, we'll evaluate the invention, and we'll come out with a report. And we'll send that report to you, and then we'll talk to you about it. And this will help inform you of what the landscape looks like, what you need to do as you prepare for your presentation at the Patent and Copyright Committee. And then it may tell you that maybe it's not time to disclose to the Patent and Copyright Committee. Maybe you need a little bit more work to show that this is actually going to work. Maybe you need to do that in vivo experiment or something like that. But we can kind of talk to you about that and walk you through that. So once you're there, you'll prepare to present to the Patent and Copyright Committee. So for the Patent and Copyright Committee, the first time that I presented, I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't have any idea. Just they invited me over to BioVentures. I walked into the conference room. Here's 10 accomplished scientists from UAMS. And Joe Andrew said, "Okay, you're on." And there's no audio video to present anything. We had handouts, or you just talked extemporaneously. I felt ambushed. And it wasn't, it was just my own ignorance. I just didn't know what to expect. So we want you guys to be a little more prepared. Right now, they're all on Zoom. Since the pandemic, we're probably going to bring those back into the conference center. So we put everybody on the hot seat once again, but right now we're doing it on Zoom. What it really consists of is you prepare about a 10-minute talk. What we do is we put about 3 disclosures into each patent and copyright meeting, and we try to get through those. And so if the inventors get about 10 minutes to talk, we find that we can get through a meeting in about an hour and a half. And generally, it doesn't sound like much. I know as scientists, a 10-minute talk sounds almost insulting if you were given that slot at a national conference, right? But you can usually summarize your invention in 10 minutes. You should be able to. You should be able to actually summarize it in an elevator pitch and convince somebody. You don't have to bring every data slide. You don't have to convince us with all that. You can attach supplemental information to your disclosure as well. We can look at that. But in 10 minutes, it'll give us a good snapshot of what your invention is. And at that point, then the committee, then they're usually, like I said, most of them are scientists, some are business people, but they'll ask you questions from the basic science to what you think the marketability is. And we usually shy away from those because as a scientist, I mean, we all think our inventions are each worth $1 billion. So we'll just say that it's $1 billion more. It's $1 billion market. It's cancer. It's $1 billion market. Of course, it's worth a lot. But after that, then we'll let you go, and then we'll discuss privately your invention, and then we'll make a decision. And I just went over all that. And so then after that presentation, you'll have 3 outcomes from the committee. The first outcome is return to inventor. And that will be either it's something that UAMS really doesn't have the capacity to promote or to pursue, or we don't think there's maybe a market for it, but then once it's returned to inventor, we'll actually sign the invention back over to you, and you're free to pursue it. If you think you're wrong, you're free to pursue it on your own, like Florida did with Gatorade. They actually, returned that and no, Florida didn't do it with Gatorade. I'm thinking of another invention. Did they? Okay, yeah. So Florida, turned it over to the inventor with Gatorade. They didn't want any part of it, and well, we all know that story. But that's pretty rare. Usually, the first decision will be retain rights and encourage further development, and that means it looks good. I think we might think it might be an idea, but you need more development to show. If you think that it treats cancer and you have, a few Western blots from some in vitro assays, and we think, well, we might want to see some in vivo experiments, maybe some mouse models, and you need to take it just a little bit further. And to help you with that, in the last year, we've spun up a new program called the BioVentures Development Awards. And so if you're at the retain rights, if you get this decision and you have really thought about it and consulted others of what's actually needed to further your invention, you're eligible for $10,000 award. And so you apply for this $10,000 award. It goes back to the committee. They review it, and then they decide whether you should, get the award. And it's a 1-year award with specific milestones to reach just for that purpose. And a lot of times so far, it's going to be like maybe a mouse model or a mouse study. The third will be file a provisional patent application. And there are different types of patents. The first patent is a provisional patent. And a provisional patent is just something that's filed by our attorneys that is basically your disclosure, maybe a manuscript preparation that you have going, maybe a poster presentation that you've kind of put together, all just kind of put together into a quick provisional application. And this is filed. And what this does is it gives you protection for 1 year. And it's not reviewed by the Patent and Trademark Office. It's just filed and gives you protection for 1 year. And so then from that 1 year, your clock starts before we have to decide to file a larger application, which is called a PCT, which is a lot more detailed, and that is reviewed by the Patent and Trademark Office. But this will give a 1 year protection for you. You can disclose it. You can present to meetings. You can publish. So it gives you freedom to work with this. And most importantly, it gives you freedom to develop that invention further with all the data you're going to need to put into that full application. And if you get to that stage, these are a little more competitive, but you can apply for the BioVentures $25,000 award. It's the same thing, but it's It's just a little bit higher since you have that provisional patent and gets you a little further down the road. Okay, so I have to talk a little about who's an inventor on a patent. And this is important because if you keep someone off of a patent, or if someone should be on a patent, which is usually what we think about. There's an inventor that contributed, but they weren't included on the patent. That can invalidate the patent. The person that was just not included can come to the Patent and Trademark Office and say, look, here's the body of work that I contributed to this invention, and I was excluded from it. And that can actually invalidate a patent. And the other side of this, if someone's included on a patent that didn't do any work, that can also invalidate the patent. So it's important that you know everyone's contribution to the patent. And it has to do with two important concepts. There's the conception of the idea. Did they contribute to the conception of the idea, or did they contribute to the reduction to practice? And that implies knowledge in reduction to in reducing it to practice. And it's not just the technician that was assigned to do an assay that they didn't really understand. It's that they're part of that process of the inventing, and that can get kind of dicey and it can get a little bit confusing to people. But something the conversation that you should have, and you should have this early too, because sometimes we're doing something in the laboratory and we don't understand that. We don't really think that we're inventing something, that we're in the process of inventing, and all these lab meetings that we're having. But this is all part of the invention process, and it's just like authorships. You need to think about what order you're going to have on authorships. You need to think about inventors. All right, great. You have a patent. Now what do you do? Well, like Sarah so eloquently, and her slides are much more interesting than mine, put together. You have a couple of decisions. You can license the invention to a company. That's the number one decision. Or you can form a company. That's the harder one. So the licensing is where the inventor will make royalties off of the patent. It's passive income. You've invented it, and as someone licenses it and royalties come in, then you will get checks for that. That's the pros. It's hands off. The cons is you have less control over the invention. And that's hard for inventors. That's hard for scientists. We've spent years developing this. We, got grants on it, and it's been our baby. And you just hand it off to somebody else to do with, and it's hard to do. So if you are more controlling and you want to keep control of that, the whole time, then you can form a company. And these are called startups or newcos, and you form this around the invention with plans to develop the technology. And you want to put a team together. The pros are, you have a lot of control over it. The cons are, this is a lot of work. I speak from an outside watching a lot of startups coming. And the thing you have to recognize early is scientists do not make good CEOs. You want to build a team. You want to be chief scientific, officer or whatever you want to call yourself, and input into the scientific aspect, but you don't want to be CEOs. And we have Jay Emme, chair of pharmaceutical sciences. He's been through all this, and others that can talk to you about these startups and how to get started, how to structure them. So whatever you decide to do, BioVentures has the resources for it, so you can come to us and talk about what you might want to do. Sometimes a good person to lead the company is the postdoc from your laboratory who helped you invent it, who like Sarah said, a lot of 75% of them won't get that tenure track position. And maybe they don't want it after watching us struggle, over the years. And so they might be a good person to start that company up. And we've seen a lot of good examples of that. And a lot of those are coming from HSIE and Sarah's programs that she's running at OEI, and just really plug these trainees into this and get them started on a great career. All right, so royalties, let's talk the money. That's what everybody wants to know. How are the royalties distributed? All right, so at UAMS, the policy is for cumulative net revenues for up to $200,000, 50% goes to the inventors. And then 5% goes to the UA system, and 20% to a BioVentures reserve, and then on down the line. And then after you earn more than $200,000 on the invention, after it generates more than $200,000 in net revenues, it drops to 35%. I mean, that sounds like quite a bit, but if you have an invention that's hitting 200,000, it's probably going to hit a lot more. So it's going to generate quite a bit more revenue. But it gives that I guess they designed it to have that first 200,000 to be a nice reward for the inventor for doing it. All right. So startup resources that we can help you with. I'm wrapping up here. We can help you with, like I said, the company formation advice and assistance. Not me, but there are people in there that could help with that. SBIR, STTR funding resources. Rob Griffin has gotten SBIR, STTRs before. I've been on about 6 or 7 NIH SBIR, STTR review panels. So, I can help you from that end. Assistance with business plan drafting. We have people like John Sherrill's been, through the HSIE program, knows the lean canvas. What's a lean canvas, you ask? Don't ask me, he knows. Introduction to management resources to run the business. We can introduce you to people. Rebecca Todd, she's a grant writer with us now, but she has a long history with the Small Business and Technology Development Commission here in Arkansas. She knows a lot of people. And we know a lot of entrepreneurial support organizations that we can put you in touch with around the state. And there are a lot. I didn't realize that Sarah had started this ESO working group on Zoom. And after I came onto BioVentures, I joined it. And holy cow, there's 25 people in here. And I think it's grown, hasn't it? 70 or 50. Wow. 50 now. So yeah, so there are a lot of people interested in helping entrepreneurs in Arkansas. And like I said, we're writing grants all the time to try to increase the capacity and commercialization capacity. And then for students, BioVentures is involved in not only programs that OEI, where with the Health Science Entrepreneurship Boot Camp, which is run out of the Conductor in Conway, the I-Core STEP program with UA Fayetteville. Is that still? Okay, good. All right. Well, a little segue there for you. And then for postdocs, we have the TRI and the Health HSIE program that I talked about that John and others in this room have been a part of. So all of these are available for students and for faculty. We haven't run it in a while, in a couple of years, but the fast-paced course is sort of the I-Core light. But anyway, for everybody, we have these resources available. We can connect you to them, and at every stage of your invention, up until you're probably exiting your company, we can kind of help you up to that point. So if you have any questions, you can scan the QR code or just go to bioventures.tech and we can help you. So.